Hey, White Sox fans, Brett Ballantini here, hosting, believe it or not, what is just the third edition of Dugout Metrics. Yes, it's been since mid-January. We're now on a 2-month interval. And yes, I have already scolded my main guests and co-hosts here. Trevor Lyons, currently in Kentucky. He is making his way throughout all 50 states, it seems, as we are doing these Dugout Metrics podcasts. And Luke Smailes, who I believe is actively playing ball and had a game just yesterday. Maybe we'll hear about that in a little bit. But welcome, guys. We are going to start off in the first half of this podcast, at least, to talk about our prospect list and prospects. Both of you guys assembled lists for me to help put together what the South Side Sox top 100 prospects is. I know a lot of people snicker at the notion of that, but hey, all these guys deserve some shine. We can only get to 100 of them. And right now on the site, we're right about halfway through. We're just about at 50. And the guys we're going to be talking about here today are almost universally going to be guys we're still going to be profiling in these couple weeks to come. So thanks for hopping on. Everything all right with both you guys?
Yeah, things are going good. Good to watch some baseball again.
Oh, for sure.
And Luke, play a little. How's left field treating you so far?
It's pretty good, yeah. We're off to a 2-1 start, and we got some more games this weekend. So
so you guys have won more than our beloved Chicago White Sox. We haven't played fewer games. What's going on? And you probably have the excuse of like a couple snowouts or something.
Yeah.
All right, Sox. Okay, listen, he doesn't want to do it, but Luke Smailes has just thrown down the gauntlet. Start winning some games. Come on, we're getting into this. But as we're still early in spring training, we're going to take a little time out in Dugout Metrics here to talk prospects. And the way we're designing it here, we're going to go through maybe about 5-10 guys. And in all of these cases, both Luke and Trevor had, of course, these prospects on their top list, but there might have been a bigger discrepancy between their rankings. So in the effort of, or in the interest of some sort of counterpoint, we're going to start off with Trevor, and I'm going to have these guys just sort of alternate and throw out names, and we'll just have a little quick discussion about each guy and how they ranked on their list. So, all right, Trevor, you drew the long stick. So who's your first guy?
Yeah, let's go. So my first guy that was a pretty big discrepancy, might have been one of the bigger ones that we had, was Jake Berger. I had him at 18, and it looks like Luke had him at 32 in the prospect rankings. And obviously that would be a guy that you might expect to see some uncertainty around, just because of the fact that we haven't really seen him for 2-3 years. Last we really got to look at him, he was playing in a collegiate summer ball league, and not even one of the better ones at that. So he, coming into spring training, looks like maybe half of the Jake Berger that we remembered. He definitely has trimmed down. And one of the big things, even prior to his injuries, people were concerned about him sticking at third base. And after tearing his Achilles 2 different times in the lengthy rehab process, people were wondering if he was even going to be making it back onto a baseball field, let alone sticking at third base. So that wasn't a good sign for him. But with the way that he's moving around in the limited video that we've been able to see, it looks really promising. It looks even more promising than prior to his injury, because he's so mobile and so agile. So that is kind of one of the things that encouraged me, is the fact that he may actually be able to stick at third base. And then his hit tool was always kind of his carrying tool. He put up insane numbers at Missouri State in college. And he was ranked coming into the season that he got injured as the number 10 prospect in the White Sox organization. So with all the injury setbacks, obviously it's going to take some time, bump him down the rankings a little bit. Obviously he's gotten 2-3 years older at this point, which is never helpful. But I think 18 is where I had him, and we'll see what happens. He's a guy that you want to root for.
Forgive me, Jake, but the name it's built for this. He has sort of gone from whopper down to slider, and he looks great. His early returns in spring training, some games haven't been great. But Luke, for you, I'm guessing probably some of your lower ranking had to do just simply that injury history and the fact that it's just unknown, and he has sort of lost those couple of years.
Yeah, it's crazy. He hasn't played a minor league game, I'm just looking now, since 2017. So it's been 3 years, which is insane. You feel bad for the guy, but I think it's just such a long time to take off from playing, affiliated professional ball. And like Trevor kind of said, there were concerns about him sticking at third base. I think, him cutting down some weight is gonna help that. But I think with him, he's probably going to have to play a year. I would think a year or maybe 2 years of minor league ball at least before we talk about seeing him in Chicago. And he's turning 25 next month. So now maybe we're talking about a 26 or 27-year-old rookie, which isn't out of the question, but I just think he has limited upside at this point. And I think while some of the guys I have ahead of him maybe have less of a percent chance to make it to the big leagues, I just don't think that Berger will ever be like the impact starting third baseman maybe that we thought when we drafted him. But he looked good back 3 years ago when he played. He put up some decent numbers, but again, that was in low A ball. So he's just a kind of an enigma right now that anything you would get from him, I guess at the professional level, will be a plus.
And let's hope that him being thrown at the deep end, getting the call to the major league spring training, which certainly was by no means a given, although I guess on the 40-man, I guess more or less it is. Hopefully it's just a bonus for him and he's not putting any sort of extra pressure on himself and doing that, whether he does well or not. Okay, for what it's worth, not that anybody cares what I think, but so far I believe I'm team Trevor. So Luke, you're up now. Who are we talking about next?
I think a very, very interesting prospect is DJ Gladney. Pretty high. I think I noticed, I don't know how high Trevor had him, but I have him at 15. And I think that's higher than most lists that I've seen. But this might be a little biased here, but I had an opportunity to see him over the winter hit in person. He was hitting with one of the White Sox minor league hitting coaches, and the bat company I worked for, Homewood Bat, he was swinging our bats, and he was toying with the idea of going to a heavier bat is what his hitting coach was trying to get him to do, and he's only a 19-year-old kid. I saw him hit some pitches off batting practice. He had about 112 miles an hour and was consistently hitting balls over 105 off about 60 mile an hour batting practice. And the hitting coach, Devin DeYoung, he's one of their minor league hitting coaches, turned around and said, "I've been around Robert, I've been around Jimenez, I've been around Jose Abreu. This 19-year-old is absolutely crushing baseballs, and this guy, I think he called him a unicorn, what he was able to do at 19 years old." Now, the thing with him is that he has to cut down his swing strike rate, has to cut down his strikeouts. But I think we'll see the Sox challenge him a little bit. He might go to Kannapolis this year as maybe just a 19 or 20-year-old. And I think his upside as being like an impact offensive player, whether that be at third base or maybe corner outfield, first base, I think he could be an absolute stud as a steal and as one of their later round draft picks.
I like this. I'm a bandwagon fan here because I've just switched over now to Team Luke. And I also like what Luke's doing here because he's like, I sort of touched this guy a little bit. I had a little impact on him, so I'm just riding with him. All right. So, okay, counterpoint for Trevor. I'm guessing might have to do with a little bit of that K rate, but what are you seeing in him that maybe had you putting him down a little bit lower on your list?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Team Luke now too. Dang, I don't have that kind of insight into DJ, but that personal experience is pretty cool, and I'm sure most of the people who are ranking him don't have him as high as Luke because of that. I know I didn't. I had him at 29. Like I said, I don't have necessarily the insight that Luke does, but hopefully he takes off this year, and if he is challenged, steps up to that challenge because those numbers are definitely eye-popping. I think a lot of the discrepancy in general, just looking at some of the guys that Luke had a little bit higher than me, they're typically younger guys with some concerns about swing and miss and concerns about approach. So obviously in the minor leagues, that's something that can be worked through, but I like, guys that are going to put the ball in play. I mean, strikeout, swinging strike rate is kind of going away a little bit, and it's not necessarily as important. So it's not the end all be all, but a lot of the guys have very low walk rates, even in the minor leagues where walks are a lot more common. So if he can figure out an approach and develop that, it sounds like the sky's the limit.
Okay, persuasive, Luke, persuasive. But okay, Trevor, hit him with your next guy.
All right, let's see who we got. Jimmy Lambert. Let me see exactly where we had each other for Jimmy, but I had him at 12. Luke had him at 22. He's 27 years old, another one of these older prospects that we talked about a little bit with Jake Berger versus DJ Gladney type thing. A lot closer to the big leagues and had a cup of coffee in the big leagues. 27 is obviously pretty old for someone that just is getting their first look in the big leagues, but he has dealt with some injuries, and the way that starting pitchers are throwing at a high level deep into their 30s these days, I don't think that's necessarily an absolute killer. He was getting a lot of love from Dallas Keuchel. That was someone that Keuchel singled out as someone he was really impressed with. And I was really impressed with him in spring training of last year and was excited to see kind of what he was going to do before his injury history. So as long as he can stay healthy, I think he's a guy that compares pretty favorably to Jonathan Stiever. I think they have relatively similar player profiles, and everyone has Stiever up in the top 10 for the most part of the White Sox prospect rankings. And I think Lambert maybe a step below that, his stuff maybe a tick below that, but he has a lot more experience in the minor leagues and sustained success there. So I could see him being a guy that can be a swing man or a back end starter for a contending team.
Okay, Trevor's calling us out. He says, listen, if you're going to put Stiever up high, you got to piggyback Lambert. I opted maybe not quite to do that. Luke didn't either. And I'm guessing perhaps once again, this is becoming a theme with Berger, maybe now Lambert, that maybe injury concern is what bumped Lambert down a little bit for you, Luke?
Yeah, I know he already had Tommy John surgery in 2019, and then he was shut down after he made his debut with another forearm strain. So I think, yeah, injury risk definitely played a role in that. I think if I remember watching those 2 innings he did throw, not, whether he was injured or not, he looked pretty good. If I remember, I think his curveball was working pretty well. And part of what helped him kind of rise through the ranks is an uptick in velocity back in 2018. So I think a lot of people now have him projected more as like a middle relief kind of swingman role, like Trevor said. But I also think if he's healthy this year, he could impact the big league club as some starting pitching depth that hopefully they don't have to get too deep into. But again, it's good to have those guys ready and that aren't super young, that have experience kind of in the upper levels of the minor leagues.
Yeah, it's funny to look back and think that obviously Lambert got hurt pretty quickly, but before Cody Hoyer became such a great story and Matt Foster, I mean, Lambert really had made the impact, I think, that opened eyes first at the major league level, and it's easy to forget because he was sort of in and out so quickly. Okay, Luke, your turn to draft.
Let's see. Who else do I like? Well, I know we've talked about him before, but I think Zack Burdi is an interesting name to talk about. I know he's given up some runs this spring. Notably, I think he gave up an absolute bomb to Corey Seager the other day. But I think he is a guy. It's such a weird story how he came. He was a first-round draft pick, and right when he's picked, everyone tabbed him as the future closer of the White Sox. And within like a year, I think people thought, oh, he'll be the closer by like 2017. And then he had injuries, inconsistent play, his velocity kind of bounced back and forth after his injury. He was shut down and he had to work his way back through. And then last year he got called up, and I remember thinking, well, Zack Burdi, let's see what he can do. And he was sitting upper 90s with good command of a slider. And he gave up some runs, but I think the stuff there kind of excites you with that potential. I know the Sox recently have had really good success with developing these kind of relief pitchers. So I think Birdie's in the interesting state right now where he doesn't have to be, he doesn't have to be the closer. He doesn't have to be a top 5 guy in this White Sox bullpen. He can just be a guy, maybe one of the first guys that they would call up from AAA should there be an injury. And I think, anytime you can sit a fastball 98 to 100 miles an hour with a feel for two other pitches, I think it leaves you with some upside. So I still think he can be a really solid relief prospect.
Okay, Trevor Luke, he wild carded you. He went off the board, but I think he played right into your hands because I believe you're still a pretty big Zack Burdi guy.
Yeah, I definitely like Birdie. I remember last year, towards the end of the year, Luke was talking about some spin, some pitch metrics, and Birdie had some outstanding metrics for White Sox relievers in comparison to the rest of them. I think he was top of the board with his slider there. But obviously, like Luke said, he's gotten hit around a little bit this spring, which you don't like to see. His command has been a bit shaky, and that was kind of the big thing last year that was keeping him from having sustained success, was that command of the fastball wasn't necessarily there. I had the chance to interview him for South Side Sox last spring, which was pretty cool insight into kind of his rehab process and some of the changes that he made to try and stay healthy and get that velocity back. And yeah, I definitely think he can be an impact arm. He was actually going to be one of the people in the later segment that I brought up that may have not necessarily played his way off of the major league roster, because I don't think he was going to start there anyway, but just it does look like the command issues are still there, which it's very, very early. So you can take that with a grain of salt.
That's a really nice return serve on Luke too, because you managed to pull out of nowhere the personal touch there. If you hadn't had that interview, it seems like a million years ago. If you hadn't had that interview, hey, later in the year, whenever it was, August when he finally got called up, maybe he's not a major leaguer in 2020.
That interview was the turning point for sure.
Come on. All right, your draw, Mr. Trevor.
All right. I'll go with Gavin Sheets. I think I had him 16th. Luke had him 27th. His spring has not been super productive, but the reports coming out that he is trying to develop as a corner outfielder as well as just a first baseman. That gives him a little bit of flexibility and improves his value. He's always been a guy coming out of college. It was interesting because he was one of the top power bats in the draft. And when he got to the minor leagues, he didn't really show much of that power that was kind of his calling card. But in return, he made contact at a high rate and would hit for a high average. So you do like to see that. And he missed all of last year, wasn't invited to the alternate site, which kind of motivated him to look into maybe trying to improve at a different position. The White Sox do have quite a few first base / DH types. He's a left-handed bat, which they need. I don't necessarily know how much impact he will have with the current White Sox team, but I think that for the reasons that I mentioned with the hit tool and the power potential, he can be a guy that, is a middle teens prospect in the system.
I've heard right field is open and available to any of these minor leaguers who want to try and take it. So
if anyone wants to step up and take that, that would be outstanding.
And I think it's important that Rick Hahn has acknowledged right off that he was impressed by the fact that he's become, at least apparently, a functional outfielder enough to sort of be thrown into that mix. If that's the way he's got to bang his way into the majors, then go for it. And also interesting to note, I don't have the exact year. I want to say maybe it would be 32 years ago. Larry Sheets, his father, played in Charlotte, and I believe he is ticketed for Charlotte if they ever get Charlotte underway this year. So that's going to be interesting. Sheets. Okay, this won't be the first time I ever ask you to do this, Luke, but I'm on Team Trevor with Gavin. I believe I had him number 10 on my list. Luke, again, won't be the first time I'll ever ask you to do this, but tell me why I'm an idiot.
Well, I don't think you're an idiot, Brett, but I am not as high on Sheets as you guys are. Look, I mean, his past 2 years, he's at a WRC plus. 2018, he was in high A of 123, so he's 23% above average. Goes to double A in 2019, and he's 22% above average. So it looks good, but I think there's concerns with his swing plane that he's not getting the kind of loft you'd like to see from a power hitter, and that he can hit for power, but it's only in very specific parts of the zone. So I think his outlook at the major league level would be a little bit tough, just because maybe you have you don't want to have a first baseman that's, hitting 270 with like 7 to 10 home runs. So I think with Sheets, it's kind of like just, show me more. Show me you can make those adjustments to get to more of your power. You obviously have shown raw power at Wake Forest and then in batting practice that people see. But, let's, he showed a little bit more in Double A in 2019, but let's maybe go to Triple A and show that you can be a power hitter and not sacrifice too much of that contact rate that he's been pretty successful with. So, again, just kind of a first baseman that maybe can play the corner outfield. 24, going to be 25 years old. I just think his outlook's a little bit limited, and I think he could still crack the lineup or maybe compete for the DH job here out of spring training, even though he hasn't done that well so far. But again, I tended to like more of the younger, higher upside type players higher in the rankings.
All right, we're having an entertaining prospects discussion. It's probably about midway through the podcast. We're going to take a break. For those of you watching, just take a quick little snooze. Those of you listening, you're going to hear a couple announcements. And Gavin Sheets, now that you're watching, please use that last bit of information from Luke as motivation to make sure you hit 30 out in the very, very hitter-friendly environs of Charlotte this summer. I'm sure Luke is all behind that as well. We will be back in just a minute. Hey there, White Sox fans. We are back with Dugout Metrics number 3. We're having so much fun drafting prospects and talking about them. I think probably the spring training discussion is going to have to be pushed to Dugout Metrics 4, which will put pressure on these two guys who have been a little idle in getting routine programming up, because we're not going to be able to talk about spring training if we talk again, let's say, in May. So maybe we'll have a real quick 1-2 punch going with Dugout Metrics. I believe, Luke, you are up in our prospect draft. Who are we going to talk about next?
Let's talk about somebody that Trevor, I don't know if he had listed, but Hunter Schreiber. I think this guy is interesting. I remember when they traded for him, I was like, ooh, the Sox got a reliever from Tampa that they were trying to clear some space from. And I think it was for international bonus pool money. So I'm like, ooh, this guy was a senior sign out of college. He was older. He was looking pretty close. And this was before we had, the Hoyers, the Fosters, the Evan Marshall. So I thought, oh, this could be a guy that, through this rebuild could be a decent relief option. Since then, it looks like he wasn't invited to Major League camp. So that tells me he's probably injured. If you're he's injured or something happened to his stuff, because I guess if you're a 25-year-old relief pitcher and you're not at Major League camp, something's going on there. But even back in 2019, he really tore up Double A. Not quite the strikeout numbers you'd like to see, but he had a 2.77 ERA, a 3.28 FIP. And then he got hit around in a pretty small sample in Triple A back in 19. But again, it looks like now he might be dealing with some kind of injury. But I also read a write-up on Fangraphs about him that he has a super unique release point that's really high, that creates a really steep and can be tough angle on hitters. So he's kind of a quirky left-handed pitcher. But I think, if he gets back to playing, whenever that may be, I think he could be another interesting release pitching option that the Sox, again, have shown that they can develop.
Okay, Trevor, probably a case of you just not having as long a list as Luke submitted, but thoughts on Hunter Schryver and perhaps explanation for why he might not be in our Major League camp.
Yeah, I am not sure why he's not in Major League camp, but as you mentioned, my list went to 30, and Luke's was a little bit longer. He may have shown up if my list went to 40 or something like that. But I'm not super, super well-versed in Hunter Schryver, so I'm not going to necessarily have much to say to debate Luke on this one. But sounds promising, and hopefully he is healthy, and hopefully he has a big 2021 and wherever he ends up in the minor leagues.
The prospect time has flown by. We're probably on our last couple, and the draft pick is to you, Mr. Trevor.
Yeah, I'm going to take Lenyn Sosa. Let's see what we got here. Difference of 6. I had him at 22. Luke had him at 28. He's a shortstop, maybe more of a second baseman in the big leagues, but he's another guy that I mentioned that has that hit tool, good bat to ball skills, good contact skills, very young for every age that he's played at. And he has shown a 6% lower strikeout rate than the league average as he was moving through the minor leagues. Top 5, I believe, in his single A league in doubles. So he needs to get a little bit stronger and add a little bit of loft to get to that home run power. But I think that this kid can really hit. And that's kind of the calling card for his tools. And, that is most likely the most important tool that you can have is the ability to hit. So he's a guy that has an advanced bat for a guy that's 20, 21 years old. And yeah, that's kind of my reasoning for where I had him. I don't think it was super high in comparison to a lot of the prospect rankings. But he's someone I'm interested to watch throughout this season. He may play shortstop, but I don't know necessarily if he can stick there.
Maybe I'm just speaking as such an extreme lefty. I always just call him Lenyn Sosa. I don't know if that's correct or not, but
yeah, I have no idea either. That may be
28th. Luke isn't exactly a low ranking either. And Sosa's been a guy who's been on everybody's radar, I think, pretty much since he joined the organization. So quick thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's a guy that Fangraphs notes has really good barrel control. He's 21. It looks like he may be tabbed for either high A or double A, and he'll be Rule 5 eligible next offseason, I believe. So, he's a guy who hasn't really shown a whole lot yet, but I think he's pretty projectable. I think some evaluators think he can grow into his body a little bit more, maybe hit for some more power. But anytime you have a guy who's got a knack for finding a barrel, something you can't really teach, it's a good sign. But just kind of another case of show me more, and we'll kind of see how he does as he's challenged to move up the ranks.
I know everybody really listening and watching is waiting for this to know who I ultimately side with, Trevor Luke here. But listen, pressure's on. It's Luke's pick, the final pick, and I'm sort of Team Trevor 3, Team Luke 3. So this could really make or break it, Luke.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Discrepancies. How about James Beard? So I had him a lot higher. I think it's just following the theme of upside. I just think this guy's super exciting. I think some people have called him like the fastest guy in the minor leagues. Right. So, we'll have to see if he's more of a track star or an actual baseball player. But it seemed like the Sox took a pretty decent shot at this guy. He's a guy who they're going to have to take, a number of years to develop. But when you give a guy those kind of physical tools and maybe try to teach him how to be a professional hitter, it could work out. They have him an ETA right now of 2024. So, again, we'll have to wait a little bit for him. But I think he's just exciting. I mean, he's got maybe NFL running back type of speed. So we'll have to see if they can kind of develop him from the ground up. And again, it kind of sticks with my high upside themed list.
Yeah, as much as I love him rocking the braid, he's got the NFL running back hair as well. As much as I love the look, I think in my case I had him much lower. But I think it's just sometimes because there's a lot of other guys that you feel better and you have a little better feel for, so they just make it ahead. It's not like I or Trevor are like down on Beard, that's for sure. But again, number 25. That's not exactly a low ranking, Trevor. But your thoughts on James as well?
I think I had him at 31, based on what you had sent out. That could be wrong too, but okay. He flies, as Luke mentioned. He absolutely flies. There's no denying that. He is one of those guys, like Luke said, with the last one that we were talking about, Sosa. going to need to show me more before I really move him up. He hasn't really shown any other tool besides his speed. He's 20 years old, so he's really not that young. He's not an international prospect, so he was drafted out of high school, but he's not that young to be a guy that hasn't shown anything other than straight line speed. And he's right-handed. He's a right-handed hitter, so for a Billy Hamilton type, you would always prefer that type of guy to be left-handed to get down the line as fast as possible. That might give him a tenth of a second down the line extra. So maybe that 80 grade speed plays as a 70 down the line. But yeah, he's a guy that could fly up if he shows anything this year with the bat, with power, anything like that. Give me something, James.
Man, Luke, Trevor just nailed you with your own weapon. Youth. I like that. He went for the kill.
They spent look, in 2019, they spent a 4th round pick on him. So you'd hope they think there's something there that they can develop him as a hitter. But yeah, I just looked, he had an almost 40% strikeout rate in his professional debut. I know a lot of people don't put a lot of stock in that first kind of stint as you're called up, but yeah, it should be interesting.
This was a wonderful battle, and of course it went on longer than I even thought it would. And so again, as I maybe teased there around the break, we might have to have like a 1-2 punch, a real quick comeback with Dugout Metrics 4, because we're not really going to have time to get to talk spring training and maybe who has impressed and maybe who's disappointed in both these guys' eyes. And again, you heard it when we were talking prospects here, taking sort of that metric angle to things, which is why we are, hence the name. But this one's been a lot of fun. We are pretty much everybody we just talked about is still to come in terms of the prospect rankings and the essays that we're running. We're just about around number 50 now. And so by the end of the month, we are going to be through up to number 1, our number 1 South Side Sox prospect. So use this podcast, I guess, as the kickoff to that. And thanks, guys. Thanks for offering your thoughts and helping form what is the South Side Sox top 100.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. Go Cohawks.
Yeah.
No
Yes. All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for reading. And thanks even for watching. And we'll be back with another Dugout Metrics sometime before late May.